Tare was lying on the couch, feeling sharp pains that made her clutch her belly. It was time. She could feel the baby coming, but she was terrified. She called out to her husband, Joa, begging him to take her to the hospital. But instead of rushing to help, he just stared at the TV, turning up the volume as if it was just another evening. "You're exaggerating," he said lazily, not even looking at her. "Wait till morning." His words stung like a slap. Tare felt a wave of panic wash over her as the pain intensified. She tried to stand up, but before she could even get to her feet, her water broke, right there at his feet. But instead of offering help, Joa just walked away, as if this was nothing to worry about. The sound of the TV grew louder in the background as Tare's world seemed to collapse. She felt completely alone in her time of need. The pain was unbearable. Tare's legs shook with every step, but she had to get out of that house. She had to find help. With her swollen belly and the desperate need to get to the hospital, she gathered every ounce of strength she had left. Barefoot, in the cold of the night, she stumbled toward the door, her heart racing in fear. Every step felt like an eternity. The baby was coming, and she knew she couldn't wait any longer. But as she reached for the doorknob, Joa appeared, blocking her way. His face was cold, emotionless. He didn't care. "Where do you think you're going?" he sneered, his voice full of disgust. "No woman in my family gives birth in the middle of the night like a stray dog." His words cut through her, but she didn't have time for his cruelty. She was in pain, and she needed him to help. But he just stood there, looking at her like she was nothing. Tare, trembling and struggling to breathe, pushed past him, trying to get out, but Joa didn't let her. He stepped closer, his body a barrier between her and the world. He slammed the door shut, locking her in. Her heart sank. The world felt like it was closing in on her. She looked at him, eyes filled with fear and confusion. Was he really doing this? Was he really going to leave her here, alone, in the middle of labor, to suffer? She collapsed at the threshold of the door, her knees buckling beneath her. The pain was so intense she thought she might faint. Tears streamed down her face, but she didn't cry out. She was too weak, too broken by his words, by his actions. The one person she thought would protect her, the one person she thought loved her, was now the one preventing her from getting the help she so desperately needed. She lay there, on the cold floor, trembling uncontrollably. The only sound in the room was her painful breaths. Her mind raced, her body betrayed her, and all she wanted was to feel safe. But the door in front of her, the door that should have led to freedom and help, was shut. Joa didn't care. He turned his back and walked away, leaving her there, trapped and alone. The tears in her eyes blurred her vision as she watched him walk off. She was alone in the dark, in pain, with no one to turn to. Joa didn't even look back. It was as if she wasn't even human to him anymore, just something to be discarded. The door she had hoped would lead to safety now felt like a prison. The darkness around her seemed to close in even tighter, suffocating her, making her wonder if she would ever escape this nightmare. But even in that moment, despite the pain and betrayal, something inside her snapped. She wasn't going to let him win. She wasn't going to let him destroy her. But in that instant, all she could do was cry silently, wishing, hoping for a miracle to come and save her. The pain was unbearable. Tara was on the floor, trembling, clutching her belly as she cried out. Every wave of contraction hit her harder than the last, and she could feel the baby struggling inside her, trying to come into the world. But she wasn't getting the help she needed. Joa was nowhere to be found, and all she had was the harsh silence of the room. Then, out of nowhere, Mama Joa appeared. She stood over Tare, her eyes cold and judgmental. Tare's heart sank as she looked up at her husband's mother, the woman who had never once accepted her as part of the family. Mama Joa stared down at Tare like she was nothing more than an inconvenience. Instead of offering comfort, she mocked Tare's suffering. "We gave you a roof," Mama Joa sneered, her voice dripping with disdain. "You can at least deliver properly. Why are you making all this noise?" The words were sharp and cruel, cutting deeper than any physical pain Tare had felt. Her face was twisted with disgust as she looked down at her daughter-in-law, as if Tare's struggle was nothing more than an annoyance to her. Tare clenched her teeth, fighting back the tears, but she didn't speak. She didn't do it for herself. No, her focus was on the tiny life that was still inside her, fighting just as hard as she was. She knew the baby needed to be born, needed to be safe, and as much as the pain felt like it might tear her apart, she wasn't going to let this woman, or anyone else, break her spirit. With every mocking word that Mama Joa spoke, Tare's determination grew stronger. She could feel the baby moving inside her, the little one struggling to come into the world, just as she was struggling to survive this night. She had to stay strong, not just for herself, but for the tiny life that depended on her. Mama Joa's cold words stung, but Tara refused to let them defeat her. She had been through too much already. She had fought for her place in this family, only to be rejected, mistreated, and made to feel small. And now, as she lay there in pain, she wasn't about to let her mother-in-law's cruelty make her feel any weaker. Tara kept her eyes fixed on the ceiling, trying to block out Mama Joa's mocking tone. She ignored the harsh words that tried to break her, because she knew deep down that this was about more than just herself. This was about the baby who was going to be born into a world that already seemed so cold and unwelcoming. And Tara wasn't going to let that world take away her strength. The pain was overwhelming, but it wasn't the physical pain that hurt the most. It was the emotional weight of being rejected, being mocked in her most vulnerable moment, when all she needed was support. But even with Mama Joa standing there, looking at her with judgment in her eyes, Tara refused to give up. She would push through. She had to, for her baby, for herself. With each breath, Tara tightened her grip on her own will to survive. She would get through this. No matter how much Mama Joa mocked her, no matter how alone she felt, she would make it through. And soon, the world would see her strength, even if they didn't see it now. Her baby would be born, and she would fight every step of the way to make sure they both survived. Tara lay there in agony, unable to move, trapped in a house that felt colder with every passing second. She was surrounded by the harsh voices of Joa and his mother, their cruel words echoing in her ears as they mocked her suffering. But what neither of them knew was that someone was watching, someone who would change everything. Mireia, Tara's best friend, had come that evening to drop off some food. She knew Tara was pregnant and wanted to help, even if it was just with something small like a meal. As she reached the door, Mireia had no idea what she was about to walk into. The sounds of Tara's cries had caught her attention. At first, Mireia thought it was just the usual late-night pain of a pregnant woman, but the more she listened, the clearer it became that something was terribly wrong. She heard Joa's cold, dismissive voice, telling Tara to wait until morning. Then, Mama Joa's harsh laughter, mocking Tara for struggling. It all made Mireia's blood run cold. The betrayal was so clear. She had always known that Joa was selfish and cold, but to hear him refuse to help his wife in such a critical moment, Mireia could hardly believe it. Her heart broke for Tara, who had never deserved this kind of treatment. She was just a woman trying to bring their child into the world, but instead, she was being humiliated and abandoned in her hour of need. As Mireia stood outside, unable to believe what she was hearing, she saw Joa do something even worse. He locked Tara in the guest room. Mireia's anger surged. She couldn't stand by and do nothing. She knew she couldn't let Tara go through this alone. Without wasting a moment, Mireia quietly crept to the back of the house, avoiding any noise. She knew every inch of Joa's house like the back of her hand. She had been there many times before, laughing, sharing stories, and helping out. But tonight, everything was different. She wasn't just a visitor. She was a friend, determined to do what was right. With steady hands, Mireia pushed the back door open. It creaked slightly, but she quickly silenced it. Her heart raced as she made her way inside, her thoughts only on her best friend, who was struggling just a few rooms away. She knew she had to be careful. Any noise could alert Joa or his mother to what she was doing. But Mireia wasn't afraid. This wasn't about fear. This was about standing up for Tara when no one else would. She found Tara locked in the guest room, her face pale and strained from the pain. Tara looked up in surprise when she saw Mireia standing there, her eyes wide with relief and disbelief. It was as if the weight of the world had been lifted for just a moment, knowing that someone cared enough to come through for her. Mireia didn't say a word. She just rushed to Tara's side, offering her a comforting smile. "You're not alone," Mireia whispered softly as she gently helped Tara stand. "I'm here. I'm not going to let you go through this by yourself." In that moment, Tara could feel a surge of hope. Despite the cruelty of the people around her, despite everything that had been taken from her, she still had someone who loved her, someone who would fight for her. Mireia was her lifeline, and together They would face what came next. Tare's world was spinning, her body trembling with pain that seemed to consume everything around her. Each wave of labor was like an unstoppable force, and yet, in the darkness of the room, there was only one thing that mattered. She couldn't do this alone. Her cries filled the air, a desperate plea for help that she knew would not come from the man who should have been there for her. But there was someone else, someone who refused to let her fight this battle alone. Mireya didn't hesitate. She wasn't trained to deliver babies, but she was Tare's best friend, and that meant she would do anything to help her through this moment. The dim light of a single flashlight flickered above them, casting shadows across the room. Mireya used a towel to try and keep things clean, her hands trembling slightly, not from fear, but from the weight of the situation. But what she didn't have in experience, she made up for in love and determination. Tare squeezed Mireya's hand tightly, her pain so intense that it seemed like she might lose control. But Mireya didn't let go. She whispered to her, her voice soft and steady, "You're not alone. You'll never be alone again." Those words, spoken with such love, were like a balm to Tare's aching soul. In that moment, she wasn't just a woman in pain, she was a mother, surrounded by the only person who cared enough to stay by her side. As Tare screamed through another contraction, Mireya stayed calm, her eyes never leaving her friend's face. She encouraged her, telling her to breathe, to push, and to hold on just a little longer. The room was small, filled only with the sounds of Tare's labor and Mireya's soothing voice, but the bond between them grew stronger with every passing second. There were no doctors, no nurses, just two women, one in pain and the other a source of strength. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the cries of a baby filled the air. Tare's baby girl was born. In the quiet of the room, with only the sound of the baby's cries and the soft breath of relief from Tare, Mireya wrapped the tiny girl in a blanket, her heart swelling with pride. The baby was safe. She had arrived into this world with none of the usual comforts, no doctors, no hospital room, but she was here, and she was loved. Tare, exhausted and emotional, looked down at her daughter with tears in her eyes. She had brought this child into the world, but it wasn't just her strength that had made it possible. Mireya had been her strength, her rock in the storm. She hadn't just helped her give birth, she had given her the greatest gift of all, the knowledge that she was never truly alone. Wrapped in love, not blood, the baby girl rested in Tare's arms, a symbol of hope, survival, and the unbreakable bond between friends. And as the first light of dawn peeked through the window, Tare knew that this moment, this little life, was hers to protect. She had made it through the darkness, with Mireya's hand in hers every step of the way. Joa groggily woke up the next morning, still in his boxers, his mind foggy with sleep. He wasn't expecting anything to have changed overnight. The house was quiet, except for the faint sound of a baby crying. It was early, and the world outside hadn't fully woken up yet. But the moment he stepped downstairs and saw the baby, his expression didn't change. There was no joy, no excitement for the new life that had entered his home. Instead, his eyes were cold and sharp as he looked at Tare and her newborn daughter. "Who let her out?" Joa barked, his voice thick with irritation. He didn't care that his wife had just given birth. All he saw was a disruption to his routine. A newborn baby meant more noise, more trouble, and he wasn't interested in any of it. Tare, still weak and exhausted from the labor, didn't answer him. She just sat quietly, holding her daughter close, her eyes filled with pain, both physical and emotional. The baby's cries echoed in the room, but Joa didn't care. Mama Joa, who had been lurking nearby, sneered at the sight of the child. "Throw that thing away," she hissed, her words laced with disdain. She looked at the baby like it was an inconvenience, a burden they didn't need. It was as if the life that Tare had just brought into the world meant nothing to her. All that mattered to Mama Joa was control, and right now, the baby was an obstacle she wasn't willing to tolerate. But what Joa and his mother didn't know was that this wasn't just another quiet morning. Mireya, who had quietly slipped out of sight the night before, had been watching all of this unfold. She had heard every word, seen every cruel glance. And while Joa and Mama Joa continued to belittle and dismiss the new life in front of them, Mireya was doing something they never expected. She had been recording everything. With her phone hidden in her hand, Mireia captured the entire conversation. She filmed the callous words, the lack of care, the cruelty that was being directed at her best friend and her newborn baby. Mireia wasn't just standing by. She was making sure there was evidence. She wasn't going to let this moment pass without holding Joa and his mother accountable for their actions. As Joa ranted and Mama Joa continued her insults, Mireia's heart pounded in her chest. She knew this video would change everything. The world needed to see what kind of people Tare had been dealing with. It was no longer just about Tare's suffering. It was about exposing the truth and making sure that no one else would ever have to go through what Tare had endured. The video was now more than just a recording. It was a promise to Tare that she wasn't alone, that someone had witnessed her pain and was going to make sure the world knew the truth. And as the cries of the baby filled the room, Mireia knew that, for Tare, this was just the beginning of her fight for justice. That same morning, Mireia sat quietly in her small apartment, heart racing as she stared at the video she had just recorded. Her hands were shaking, but her mind was clear. She knew what she had to do. Without waiting any longer, she opened her social media account and uploaded the video. The title she chose was simple but powerful. Husband refuses to take wife in labor to hospital. You won't believe what happens next. She added a short caption. This is what my friend Tare went through last night. Please watch. Please share. She deserves justice. Within minutes, the video started getting likes, then comments, then shares. Thousands. People were shocked. They couldn't believe what they were seeing. A heavily pregnant woman in pain, being ignored and mocked by her husband and his mother. Viewers were heartbroken, and then they got angry. Tare's story touched something deep in everyone. Women cried, men shook their heads in shame. Strangers began tagging human rights groups and media pages. The video was everywhere, on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, on WhatsApp. By afternoon, news outlets had picked it up. Woman gives birth alone after husband refuses to help flashed across TV screens. Radio stations were talking about it. People were calling in, furious and emotional. They couldn't believe that a man could treat his wife that way. And the worst part? His mother helped him do it. Joa tried to delete the video when he saw it online, but it was too late. The video had already been downloaded, reposted, and spread across the internet like wildfire. His name and face were everywhere. People recognized the house, the neighborhood. Some even recognized Mama Joa. Angry neighbors and strangers began gathering outside their compound, chanting and demanding answers. Some brought placards. Others came with phones, recording live videos. They wanted justice for Tare. They wanted to see Joa and his mother punished. Joa peeked through the window and saw the crowd growing. Fear began to crawl up his spine. This wasn't just social media anymore. This was real. He tried to deny it, tried to make excuses, but nobody was listening. Everyone had already seen the truth with their own eyes. The whole country was watching now. Inside the house, Mama Joa shouted for them to lock the doors. She didn't understand how everything had gone so wrong so fast, but Mireia did. She knew that the world had simply seen the truth, and the truth had power, the kind that couldn't be deleted or hidden. Tare's pain had finally found a voice, and the whole nation was listening. Tare quietly packed her few things. With her newborn baby in one arm and Mireia holding her other hand, she walked away from the house that had given her nothing but pain. She didn't say a word. She didn't look back. She simply vanished. No one knew where she went. No one could find her. For a whole year, Tare stayed away from the noise, the shame, and the people who had hurt her. But she didn't waste that year hiding. She used it to grow, to heal, to learn. She joined a small program for women who wanted to become midwives. The first day she walked into the class, holding her baby close, the teacher looked at her and smiled gently. "You've already survived the hardest test," she said. Those words gave Tare strength. She studied hard, stayed up late while her baby slept, and learned how to help other women in labor, especially those with no one by their side. As the months passed, Tare became one of the best in the program. Her hands, once shaky and weak, became steady and strong. She learned how to comfort a mother, how to listen, how to hold life in her hands and guide it safely into the world. Each time she helped a woman give birth, She remembered the night she gave birth with only Mireya beside her, and she smiled, knowing she had turned her pain into purpose. After finishing her training, Tara used her little savings and help from Mireya to open a small center. She called it Hope's Breath. It was not big, but it was full of love. She made it for women like her, women who were ignored, mistreated, and forgotten. At Hope's Breath, every mother was seen, every cry was heard, every story mattered. Tara welcomed them with open arms, giving them the care and respect she once begged for. Word spread fast. Women from nearby towns started coming. Some walked for hours just to reach her. They said, "We heard about a woman who truly cares." And when they saw Tara, they felt safe. One wall in the center had a photo of a tiny baby girl, wrapped in a towel, eyes closed, peaceful. Underneath it were the words, "Born in darkness, raised in hope." That was her daughter, the reason she kept fighting. Tara had vanished from the world for a while, but now she was back, stronger, wiser, and full of purpose. She was no longer the woman begging at a locked door. She was the woman opening her own doors to others. One hot afternoon, Joa was walking through town, looking tired and confused. He had been searching for Tara for months. No one would tell him where she was. Some said she left the country, others said she changed her name. But he had no idea what was really waiting for him. As he turned the corner, he suddenly stopped. Right in front of him was a giant billboard. His eyes widened. It was her, Tara. Her face was glowing with a calm, proud smile. Next to her picture, in bold letters, it read, "Award-winning caregiver and founder of Hope's Breath, Tare Ose." Joa stood frozen. His mouth dropped open. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. The woman he once ignored, insulted, and abandoned in labor, was now a well-known name. People passing by looked up at the billboard and smiled. Some even said things like, "She saved my sister," or "Tara is a blessing to this town." Shame and regret filled his heart. But that wasn't the worst part. When he got home, he found his mother, Mama Joa, very sick and weak. She could hardly breathe and had been refused care at 2 hospitals because of unpaid bills. The only clinic that could help her was Hope's Breath. With no other option, Joa carried his sick mother to the center. He walked slowly, heart pounding. When he reached the gate, the staff looked at him. They knew who he was. Still, they didn't chase him away. They let him in. Tara was inside, speaking gently to a young mother. When she saw Joa and Mama Joa, she didn't scream. She didn't cry. She didn't even blink. Her face remained calm, professional. She nodded at the nurse beside her and said quietly, "Make sure the patient is cared for. No one is turned away here." Then she walked past them like they were strangers. And in that moment, Joa realized the truth. Tara had become someone bigger than pain, bigger than revenge. She was healing others while he was left with nothing but guilt. Every year, Tara came back to the town where it all began. But she didn't come with sadness or fear. She came with strength. She didn't return to cry or complain about her past. Instead, she came with her head high, ready to teach, ready to lift others. She now trained women, young girls, and even men on how to survive pain, how to protect themselves, and how to rise again after being broken. She stood in front of crowds, sharing her story, not to get pity, but to give hope. "I was left alone when I needed love the most," she would say, "but I didn't let that end me. I let it build me." Her daughter, now a little girl full of joy and confidence, always ran around the training center laughing, and she called Mireya Mama too, because that's who Mireya had become, a second mother who never gave up on them. People smiled when they saw the 3 of them together. They were more than a family. They were proof that love doesn't always come from blood. Sometimes it comes from loyalty. Tara's eyes would shine as she looked around at the women she was training, some pregnant, some healing from heartbreak, some just trying to find their voice. And to each one of them, she would say the same thing. Don't wait for someone to save you. Become your own miracle. You are enough. The town that once ignored her now respected her. The home that once rejected her now had her face on every wall as a symbol of power and survival. Tara didn't just deliver a child that night. She delivered a message to the world. Pain did not break her. It built her into something powerful. And now she was making sure no other woman would ever feel helpless again.